welcome back to BHookedCrochet.com. I'm your host Brittany, and in this tutorial I'm going to demonstrate how to crochet the chunky shell stitch slouch. This is a free pattern that's available at BHookedCrochet.com, and you can get the link to that pattern in the description below. To complete your slouch, you're going to need 2 skeins of Bernat Softy Chunky yarn and 2 contrasting colors of your choice. You'll also need a size 10mm crochet hook and an optional pom-pom maker if you decide to add that at the end. So we're going to begin our slouchies by working on the band. The band is going to be worked in rows, back and forth, and then we're going to stitch up the side and then start working in rounds when we get into the shell stitch. So first things first, we need to create our slip knot, and then we're going to chain 7. So now we're going to start on the ribbing pattern for the band. And we want to do a single crochet in the second chain from the hook. So we have our first chain here, our second chain right there. I personally like to work in the back bump of the chain, but you can work in either of these loops, whichever you're comfortable with. I think this creates a nice stretchy look to the end, and it actually is going to help us sew them together or crochet them together at the end when we have the full length of our band. So we just want to make 1 single crochet into every chain, and that's going to be a total of 6 stitches. So to move on to row 2, this is going to be our pattern repeat for the entire portion of our band. We're just going to chain 1, and we are going to count that as a stitch. So that is our first of 6 stitches. And we're going to work in the back loops only, so just these loops right here, and that's what's going to create our ribbing texture because we're leaving this front loop exposed, and that's going to create a nice ridge. Now since we're counting this first chain as a stitch, we don't want to work in this stitch right here. We're just going to skip over, and this is the next stitch. We're going to work a single crochet in that back loop only, and so that's our second of 6 stitches. And that's number 3. Number 4. Number 5. And number 6. I'm going to go on and show you the next row because here we had a stitch to work into, and that's because this was our foundation chain. But as we move on, we're going to need to work in that chain 1 because we're counting that as a stitch. So let's work around to the other side, and then I'll show you exactly how to do that. So you'll chain 1 again to start your next row. We're not going to single crochet into this stitch. We're going to move on to the next stitch. This is going to be single crochet number 2. Three, 4, and 5. So our 5th one is the last stitch that we're working into, but now we want to work into that chain. And so we kind of see this little twist of yarn right here. That is our chain 1. I like to find this loop right here and work into there. Now as long as you're consistent with which loop you're working into, then your work will be nice and uniform. If you're having trouble figuring out where to work your very last stitch, what I would recommend is to place a stitch marker onto this chain 1 whenever you make it. So right here I would place a stitch marker in one of the loops and then go on, and that's going to let you know which loop to work your very last stitch into. The other thing I would recommend is to count your stitches as you go. Even though we're just working with a small number of stitches here, it's really easy to throw ourselves off because we're working in that chain 1. So it's really easy to add a stitch or to drop a stitch, and that's going to make our band inconsistent or uneven. So again, finding that same loop, working my 6 single crochet into there. And so you can start to see the ribbing texture taking place, and we're just going to repeat this row for a total of 48 rows. So we have 4 that we've created here. So what I want to do is make 44 more rows, just exactly like we've demonstrated here. So go ahead and at this point pause your video, work up the full length of your band, or a total of 48 rows. Then come back to the video and we'll start working on the join and the majority of our hat. So once you've crocheted your 48 rows of that single crochet in the back loop only, what we're going to do at this point is join the 2 ends together, and we're going to do so by slip stitching across the row. Now you can do this with a darning needle and with a scrap piece of yarn, but you can really make this happen without having to fasten off or anything. We can just stitch up the side and then work on the first round. So what we want to do, we have our end with our hook here. We're just going to fold the other end just right on top, and then situate the yarn so that we're crocheting in our normal direction from here to that side. And the first thing that we're going to want to do is just make a chain. That's going to help us to transition and get our working yarn in the right place. Now what you want to do is make sure you're lining your stitches up. And we're just going to find the back loop of this opposite side. We just want to insert our hook there and make a slip stitch. And that's going to be the first initial stitch that gets everything together and in one piece. So we're just going to be focusing on the outer loops of both of the ends here. And we're going to do this because this is a good way of slip stitching them together and still maintaining the integrity of our design here. So we're going to have a similar, you'll see the join, but it's not going to be quite as obvious as with other methods. So you'll just slip stitch. So insert your hook in that outside loop on one side, and then on the outside loop on the other. Yarn over and just pull through both strands from the 2 ends, and then pull through the loop on your hook. And we have a total of 6 stitches in our band. So we just want to make sure that we have 6 slip stitches to join this together. So 1 stitch into each. Then once you reach your last one, as I mentioned, we're not fastening off or anything. We can just rotate our work and get ready for round 1. So in order to work properly in the shell stitch that we're going to be using for the remainder of our hat, we have to make sure that we're keeping our stitch count in multiples of 6. And so what we need to do for our first round is make a single crochet border all the way around. That's going to help us to have a cleaner transition from this band where we're working in rows and now we're transitioning to rounds. So having a single crochet border is always a good way to go. From here you can chain one, and that's going to set us up. Now I have my tail back here, and that is from where I first started the round. I'm just going to work over that as I go. In order to keep things in multiples of 6, we really need to have one single crochet into the side of each row. And so I'll demonstrate how that is. You'll see that there's kind of more of a bigger gap right here, and this is where we have a chain. So I just like to work my first single crochet in that little gap, and then I can see this opening right here. That's where I'm going to put my second stitch for this row. And then as we transition, now we've jumping over to this row here, you'll find that chain, and you can see it pretty easily. It's kind of sticks out there on the top. Just make your single crochet in that space, and then you'll just locate this little bar right here, and then just work your second single crochet there. And that's all we're going to do all the way around, and just keep track of your counts as you go, because like I said, we do need to keep things in multiples of 6. So if you get a little off track because we are just crocheting in the side of the row, so it's not exactly as easy as working into a stitch, but just keep track. Make sure at the end of the round you want to have 48 stitches. So once you've made it all the way around, you're just going to join with a slip stitch to your first single crochet. Now that gives us a nice foundation row, so we can start working the shell stitch next. And to start the shell stitch, we're going to be alternating 2 different rows, but the stitch pattern is going to be the same on both rows. It's just that we're going to be shifting it over from one row to the next. What we want to do is start off by chaining 1, and that is going to count as a single crochet. Now we're going to skip 2 stitches, and be careful not to count that one where our chain is. So we'll skip 1 and 2, and then double crochet 5 times into that 3rd stitch. And that's going to be our first shell completed. Now we're going to skip 2 more stitches, so skip 1 and 2, and then single crochet into the 3rd. And that's just going to help anchor the stitch down. And then we just repeat that. We'll skip 1 and 2 and put 5 double crochets in the next stitch. and then skip one stitch, the stitch here, and two, and then single crochet into the third. And so that's the pattern repeat for this round. So go ahead and finish crocheting up your shell stitches, and we'll meet back up on the other side. So once you've made it back around, you should end up with just 2 stitches remaining. And now this part can get a little bit confusing because we have our first stitch, our second stitch, and then we have this thing right here that really looks like a stitch, and it's really can be deceiving because this is actually part of our slip stitch, which is a part of this chain 1. So this really isn't a stitch here. So we just want to have a stitch here, and then we're going to slip stitch into that chain 1 to finish off the first round. So to begin round 3, we're just going to start off by chaining 3. And this chain 3 is going to count as a double crochet that's in one of our shells, specifically the one that's right in the middle. So we have 5 double crochets in each shell, and that means that we have this one that's in the center, and that one's pretty important as we're working on this round here because, as I mentioned before, we're just shifting the pattern over a little bit. So keeping that in mind, we're going to halfway finish this shell here, and then we'll finish it up when we get to the end of the round. So we'll make 2 more double crochets into the same stitch. And we're still skipping 2 stitches and single crocheting in the next. And it just so happens that that stitch that we single crochet into is the middle double crochet of that shell. Now again, we skip 2 stitches, and we're going to double crochet 5 into the next stitch, which happens to be the single crochet. And so that's always going to be the case. We're always going to place the shell in our single crochet stitch from the round below, and we're always going to make our single crochet at the highest point in that middle stitch on the row below. So once you've made it all the way around to where we started, we just need to finish up that first shell. So what I've done here is I've made my single crochet into that middle stitch on the shell below, and then I just want to locate where all of those stitches are coming from, which is right here. And I want to make 2 double crochets into that space. And that will give us a total of 5 double crochets for this shell. And all we need to do is join with the slip stitch to that 3rd chain. So round 4 is a repeat of round 2, where we started our shell stitch pattern by chaining 1. It's also going to be the last round that we're going to be using this first colorway here. You'll skip 2 stitches and you'll double crochet 5 times into the next, which again is always going to be that single crochet from the round below. So from here on out, everything is the same. You'll just repeat your shell stitch pattern until we get to the other side. I'll show you where to join and how to fasten off and start on our new color. And once you've made it all the way around to the end of round 4, you'll just want to locate your chain 1 and then simply slip stitch in that chain. And then you would go ahead and fasten off. Here I've actually reached the end of my skein here, so I'm just going to pull that tail through the loop on my hook. To begin round 5, we want to go ahead and grab our second color and just create a slip knot. Now locate the place where you made your slip stitch to finish off that 4th round. So you can see right here is where I made my slip stitch, and that's where I want to insert my hook in preparation for our 5th round. So just pull your slip knot through, and the stitch pattern itself isn't changing, so we're always going to be alternating how we start this. So we're either going to start with a chain 1 or a chain 3. So the last time we started with a chain 1. That means this time we're going to start by chaining 3, and that means that this is the middle of a shell stitch. So we're just going to proceed by putting 2 more double crochets into that same space, and then we'll finish up this shell on the other side. Now we will skip 2 stitches and single crochet in the 3rd, and then find that single crochet, and we're going to make 5 double crochets into that stitch. And so this is all a review for you at this point. I just wanted to demonstrate how to transition colors and then talk about the repeat one more time, because once we get through these next couple of rounds, then the pattern repeat is going to be the same until we finish up our hats and we're ready to draw up the top of it and finish things off. So we'll cover this round and one more, and then we'll have you repeat until you've reached the end of your hat. And so once again, when you get to the end of the round, we just need to finish off that first shell by making 2 double crochets in the same stitch. And then you'll find your chain 3, locate that 3rd chain right there, slip stitch, and that's going to finish off this round. So I'm just going to quickly go through this last row in our repeat here. So if you haven't figured out, basically what we're doing is we're repeating rows 2 and row 3, alternating. So we do 2 and 3 and 2 and 3, and we're just repeating that. So right now we're repeating row 2. So we'll just chain 1 and then 5 double crochet into that single crochet there. So skip 2, 5 double crochet, and you really don't have to do much counting for this pattern, which is the cool part about it. You really can just look and see where you need to work your stitches, and that makes this pattern go really fast, especially paired with this giant hook and the chunky yarn. So you can whip one of these out in just a few hours, really. So I have my 5, I'm just looking for that middle double crochet, so I can single crochet there, and then shifting over, finding the single crochet, and then double crocheting 5 times there. And once again, once you've made it to the end of your round, we'll just find that first chain and slip stitch to finish off the round. So at this point, go ahead and finish crocheting your 4 more rounds, working in this new colorway in the same repeat that we've been talking about here. Once you finish that, come back to the video. We'll talk about how to finish things off. So we're going to fasten off, and then we're going to work on that drawstring closure to close up our hats, and then everything will be done. Okay, so what I have done off camera is I've finished crocheting up my rounds of shell stitch in this new colorway, and right now my hat measures about 10 inches long, and that's right about where we want it to be for a slouchy style. Now all that's left to do is our drawstring bind off to kind of close this up and finish things off. So you want to leave yourself a tail that is at least 12 inches long. I would probably even go a little bit longer than that. And then you can just simply pull that loop through, and that's going to fasten things off. Now grab your darning needle and the way we work a drawstring bind off, and I talk about this a lot in some of my designs because I like to close hats up this way. Anytime we do a drawstring bind off, we're just working in and out of the stitches. So we just want to pick a starting point, and I'm just going to work in these 3rd double crochet from the shell. And this time I'm going outwards. And then I'm going to jump over a couple of stitches to the single crochets, and I'm going to go inward. And then I'm going to find that 3rd double crochet and work outward, and the single crochet and work inward. So that inward and outward motion is really the main point of doing a drawstring bind off. It doesn't really matter which stitches you're going into, as long as you're going in an in and out motion. Then when you pull on this tail, once we've reached the other side after you've done a full revolution, then it's going to draw everything up, and then you can just simply fasten it so that it doesn't come undone. And then once you've worked all the way around, so this is my starting point here, then just carefully pull on that tail and see how it draws everything up. And you just want to pull it as tight as you can so that everything comes together, but you don't want to pull so hard that you break your yarn. And once you have a nice closure there, you can see how you can't see the inside of the hat there. Then we're just simply going to start working around to fasten this off. And I just like to work in a circle and catch some of those stitches that are right there at the beginning. And you're going to work this at least 2 or 3 times around in a full circle. That way you make sure this closure is secure. Now once you've gone around a few times and you have your closure secure, the last thing that we want to do is just simply place our darning needle in the center of that join. And then just turn your hat inside out. And just pull that through. Now we're going to fasten it just a little bit more from this side. You don't have to do this one as secure, but just kind of go around a couple of times. And what I like to do is, once I have a loop here, just place your darning needle through that loop. It's going to kind of form a little bit of a knot. So just do that a couple of times. And once you're sure it's nice and secure, then you can just trim that. And that completes our hats. Now of course, if you had any ends that you still needed to weave in, you would want to do that, of course, on the inside of the hat. But this wraps up our tutorial for the Chunky Shell Stitch Slouchy. Now I don't ask for this much, but if you've enjoyed this tutorial, or if you've enjoyed other tutorials or patterns that I've provided for you, go ahead and click the subscribe button or share this video with your friends. Doing those two things will ensure that more people can find my videos so I can continue to provide these tutorials and free patterns for you. Now on behalf of BHookedCrochet.com, I'm your host Brittany, and we'll see you in the next tutorial. Go ahead and check out BHookedCrochet.com for more free patterns and awesome tutorials just for you, and of course they're all for free. We'll see you next time.